Tell you what, you can still record. It's part of the joy. I'm gonna make a setup.
Yes.
Right, if I do this, and then if I, mate. So I've seen you around on the internet landscape. So how are you these days?
But it's the first time we talk in person, so I'm really, really honored. Thank you for your time.
Mate, right back at you. Thank you very much.
I mean, we will talk about like what you're coming out sort of with the whole ADHD topic and your writing has done for me. Even though I didn't know at that time what it means, but it was for me only like 2 years ago when I was diagnosed here in Tokyo with ADHD, and I just like that gave me the clarity that I didn't have before. And then I remembered reading your articles. I think yours from 2000. When was it? 5 years ago.
Gosh, it might well have been, yeah.
You know, with this ADHD letters on this paper.
Oh yes. Funny. Was that the oh, you know what? I think I've got that tattoo actually.
Yeah.
Somewhere. The one that looked like the band. Was it the band one that then oh, what's it? Oh, I can't. God knows. I've got so many tattoos. I don't know which one it is. I've got one that says ADHD in like a band's tattoo somewhere.
Also, this AC/DC one.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Oh God, I don't know where it is. Maybe it's on my back.
Yeah.
But what made you just quickly? What made you think that you had it? Like, what got you to actually having the diagnosis?
I was just, for many years we did something similar. I was running that design agency, Japanese design agency. And you were running ustwo, and for me it became much more obvious once I was moving away from my job. So we had to close our studios in Berlin at some point, affected by the macroeconomic situation, and then all of a sudden I was in my parental leave, and then I had more time, I guess, to understand like, hey, for all these years, I have been successful, and that was my way of just compensating, I guess. Then I could always say, like, nothing wrong with me. Look, like the success speaks for itself. I didn't feel I need to work on myself. But then there were many things that I think, came up in discussions with my wife, and certain things were not really like a normal reaction. Then she was like, hey, can we check this out? What is that? And then, then the journey started opening up to like entrepreneur friends. And then they were telling me like, you won't believe it, exactly the same stuff happened to me, after they maybe crashed or burned out. Like the companies that they have been building, I have been building, you have been building, they have become so big, and then your own role was not anymore what you started with. And then that's the ceiling. And that's motivated me to start at Neurospicy Founders. So this kind of like idea of having a group of people that meet online and in person. And we all have one thing in common, that is we run companies. And then we have all our own little things like in terms of spectrum, but that is kind of secondary. I think I'm not going to check for anybody's diagnosis or stuff like this. What I'm checking for is like, are these all in a situation where they have maybe a business they're running or like similar challenges in that regard. And then that is like, a really fantastic group. And I want to now talk to people like you who are a few years ahead, I think. And some things maybe, behind, but like I think
I've gone backwards, if anything.
Right. But like, just that's the basic introduction from my side.
Fantastic. Because how long have you been doing Good Patch for?
I was there 10 years, and it was founded by a Japanese guy who came from Silicon Valley, and then he was like, understood that UX, UI going to be big in Japan because everybody had an iPhone, and companies needed to figure out how to build the apps. And then I joined him like in the very early days, and then we grew it to this big thing, which was also building own products, like you guys did, but then also taking in VC money. And then we took it public in 2020. And then all of a sudden I was this, like super young executive in a board listed company in Japan. I was not prepared for that. Like really, like I was doing a good job during that time to some extent, but I was not really like understanding what that responsibility is really, I think. So now I'm still like, involved as a shareholder, but I'm not in the operations there anymore. Now I'm building solo. I'm doing it much more freely. I do different stuff now.
Oh, mad. I mean, it's crazy that you did that you actually took it, like you IPO'd it. I mean, crikey, I don't think
That's Japanese way.
that wouldn't.
Like, a bit,
Oh,
because
yeah, okay, fair
here
enough.
is like the board, not the IPO market here is much more common. So you take smaller, maybe profitable businesses public, and then you grow them at the stock market, and you can play in the big league, sort of. But that is very unique, I think, for Japan. So, but I always referred over to ustwo. I always looked at everything you did, and I copied some stuff.
Yeah, we all do. We all.
And
No,
then,
it's not copying, is it? It's taking inspiration, I like to think.
Right. And then I had people like Davide join.
Yeah, fantastic.
And it was like, also a fantastic time. And he's still in Japan. And
yeah, he looks like he's doing great work.
Yes. And so then that is from my side. So I want to now let you talk, and we can keep it really like flowy. So I have also looked at some of the interviews you gave on the topic before, like some podcasts. And I don't know, like maybe we start by where are you now? Like what's currently on your mind, and how do you spend your days?
Yeah. I mean, my journey's not dissimilar to yours in terms of how you described it. I guess I started ustwo with my best mate when I was 24. And I'd previously been working, well, I've known him since I was 11. And that was quite important. When I look back now, that was just very natural for us to do everything together. I think over the years, we realized, or we would often joke, that the sort of sum of him plus me equals one. I mean, probably he was actually 2 and I was 0, but it meant that together we were able to achieve quite a lot. And I guess I was able to play into my strengths, and he was able to play into his strengths. And probably what that meant is, I don't know what it meant. It just meant I could go all in on, just without knowing it, I guess, subconsciously, because I was young, just being me. And I think, we followed a similar trajectory to you. I mean, we grew. We were always passionate about building I mean, you probably would call it a community, but it was a company. And we were lucky in many ways that we were extremely passionate, and we were extremely focused. I don't think we never thought of ourselves as like necessarily the best designers as such, but I think we were fairly natural at building a company. The company itself became the design project for us. And I think because we were very lucky in that we built the company in a time where there was a huge boom, the mobile boom. You referenced the iPhone. We were building towards that moment without knowing the phone was coming out. Working on, funny enough, with Sony in Tokyo Design Center. And that wave came, and I think we were just ready to capitalize on that. So we were extremely lucky that we were in the right time, in the right place, and we built this big company that got bigger and bigger. And I think that really played into my side, in that Sinks was probably more focused. We were both focused on the design at the very beginning. You had to be, but by within a few years, my focus was more on, I guess, the people and just
the energy that you brought in.
Yeah, I guess the energy. And I think, looking at you, ask where I am now. I mean, that energy perhaps was, whatever we refer to ADHD as, whether it's a good or a bad thing. I think, there was a lot of energy, and it was a relentless. I could give a lot, and I didn't. And it's funny that we went we're still going now. Went probably for about 15 years before I started to break. And I think that break was not dissimilar to yours, in that we didn't IPO, but we got more serious. We had to change for the landscape. And also I was just, like you, I pushed myself out. I didn't really see a role in it anymore. And I think my journey into discovering ADHD, which perhaps is the part of that blog that you wrote was that I started seeing a therapist, got 6-7 years ago, because I just didn't really feel the drive anymore. I think my entire identity was built around us two. I didn't. It's not like I don't feel like I chose. I was like working harder than other people as such, but my mind just told me that the only thing that mattered was building this company. And the reason, and
not many founders have the name of their companies tattooed. I mean,
no, exactly. I mean, it was, yeah, exactly. I mean, us too, and then it became a lot more than that. But I think what did I say? I was all in on it, and it's all I cared about, and at the detriment to my family. And it wasn't the like, I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur. I think when I think of the word entrepreneur, I think of someone who's able to jump across, is looking for opportunity, is able to capitalize on that opportunity. And that's definitely not what I was, or even Sinks. I mean, I think when we got passionate about something, we really wanted to do the best we could. But design, the digital landscape that you and I were sort of born into was just so exciting. And there was just we almost had to be all in because the company was getting bigger and bigger, and we weren't putting the brakes on it. But I think without knowing it, the very thing that I thought I loved, which was just being surrounded by people's energy, eventually started to just grate on me. It was just, there's only so much I could handle in terms of dealing with people's emotions. And we had made such an emotional company. It really was. We would refer to it in those days as a family company, which in hindsight is a stupid thing to do, really, because a company is a business, and at the end of the day, a business is a commercial entity, and it's not really a place for family as such. But when I refer to family, it's just about treating people well. It's about caring about people. But as I say, one of the problems of ADHD, as you know, is you jump around. But my biggest problem just became the very thing that I adored. The only thing the thing I prioritized. I love my family, of course, but I without a doubt put the company first. And one day I almost just woke up and I just didn't feel it. And so for maybe a year or so, I was just trying to think I cared in the same way. And I think it was probably, to be honest, although the digital agency we built, which was like Good Patch, that was the client side. We had done our own IP, which eventually became Monument Valley. And I think what I really referenced was that Monument Valley came out, and that was very much an embodiment of our ethos, of our values, about our commitment to taking risks. And it did really well, and obviously, as I've talked about many times, we had lots of things that hadn't done well, but this did really well for the right reasons. And I think after that, I think at that stage, sorry, I'm thinking this. I'm trying to put this all into historic. After that, I think I'd always thought that was going to be being successful in terms of producing something that your peers would respect you for. I thought that was going to help my soul. I felt like this drive that I had for building us two was probably, whether it's right or wrong, was driven by my desire to want to be liked or want to be respected. I think it wasn't an ego thing as such, or I don't see it as that, but it was definitely, I wanted people to think that we had done well, because I felt like we had produced something the right way, or the way I thought was right. But then after Monument Valley had done well, I almost still felt this sort of, there's something bigger beyond it. More.
But it was
something
such
else.
A success that it's hard to replicate exactly that.
It's impossible in many ways, I think. Well, I think it's impossible for me. But I think eventually what I started to realize, that perhaps it wasn't about that. It wasn't about, there wasn't a soul, and there wasn't going to be something I would suddenly do, or amount of money I would suddenly make, or whatever. There was something else. And I think so my road, I started seeing a therapist in just around the corner from us, and that was started off very much about me just exploring why I wasn't driven anymore. I felt really bad. My entire identity was, I only do ustwo. That's my passion. Everyone that I surround myself with knows that. And then one day I didn't feel that. So I was very empty. And just through discovering, just through talking and talking and talking, we eventually, she eventually put me on to a psychiatrist who eventually diagnosed me with ADHD. And I think that moment was just mad. I mean, I think that's possibly the moment that you might be referencing, where all of a sudden it made a lot of sense.
I liked when you wrote, like, everybody told you, like, well, we knew it all these years, like people around you, people who work with you, they said, like, well, that's not a surprise, we knew that all the time, you're the only one who didn't see it, right?
That was exactly it, and that was
so
crazy.
Cool.
It was cool. And I think, and on the other side, well, I said the other side, my wife Lise, I think it really helped her, because I think for many years she had, she pretty much brought the kids up because she knew that I was dedicated to ustwo. She knew I'd put them first, but all of a sudden, I think a lot of the things that the downside of ADHD, she suddenly realized that wasn't me doing it intentionally. And I think I remember her saying, when she loved me more for that, or she felt, it was helpful to her to be able to buck it. And I think for me, in coming out with it, I suddenly realized that I could look up, not that I've really done it properly still 5 years later, but you can look up what ADHD, you can see the different traits, and you can start to at least label yourself. And I quite liked that. I'd never really wanted to be labeled before, but I quite liked having this thing. And then I think for me, then it became this almost like a badge of honor. Like I felt like it was still quite early days of diagnosis. I felt like it wasn't so people acute, or people weren't so aware of it, and so it became like quite something I was quite interested in talking about, because it's almost like it became like I was craving this sort of success, but that didn't really solve it. And then it was like, oh, if I could talk about ADHD openly, and then maybe other people would benefit from that. So it was just, it's been a mammoth. But to answer your actual question, sorry, go for it.
Yeah, we can come to that in a moment. But like, from the moment of the diagnosis until you wrote that public blog, like, how much time was in between?
I
came home and then wrote it.
Yeah, it's a good point. Actually, I would have imagined. I mean, as you know, like one of my main impulses, obviously, something I still have to work on. So it probably would have been like the next day. I mean, it probably very quickly became, wow, I could actually, if I just talk about this openly, it will open new doors, etc. So it would have been quick. And it's funny that I say impulse, like, I think in knowing the superpower that you could say ADHD is, although sometimes I think it's the opposite, it's sort of weird. Using the power is the thing I've been trying to learn for the last 5 years, because before, I guess I thought I just did everything by intuition. Like, we built the company, I worked nonstop because it just, like, something almost was just taking me there. I wasn't really thinking. It wasn't like it was just impulse. Whereas now I know that some things are fine to impulse on, but sometimes you have to step back a bit from it. I think so it's almost like once you know the power, it's up to me to actually utilize it and not just be a fool with it.
And I feel that's like the difference between somebody with ADHD and then somebody who runs a company with ADHD. Is like the impulsivity can have bigger consequences. Like the overspending that you might have privately, for example, that becomes a company account, or like becomes millions of dollars or pounds of investment into something. And that can have different kind of dimensions, I think.
No, you're totally right, mate. And I think that's where, ustwo refers to the fact that the company had been successful, or now it's because of everyone. But at the very early days, there was 2 of us, and I mean, Sinks is still very much involved. I mean, and like, we were like yin and yang, although we're both yin and yang. I mean, it wasn't bad and good. It was, so actually I never had access to the credit card. I mean, and it wasn't through design as such. I think it was just, I was never interested. I was never really interested in the financial side at the beginning anyway. And I think with Sinks, I think he learned that because I was very much this way, he would go very much that way. So in some ways, his role became I was the yes man and he was the no man, but only because he had to be in order to counter.
He probably also became more and more that counterpart. Like he maybe you got more extreme,
Exactly.
maybe he also became more extreme. That's a bit how it went with my wife and me, because she is quite different from how she was maybe a few years ago. And we realize now it's basically just to balance me out, right? So, and that's okay. Like we all get older and wiser, but
I think it's very, I mean, and it's very difficult, I would say, because it's interesting you mentioned your wife there. Like my kids, they're 16 and 14. They've both been diagnosed recently with ADHD, and so Lise is living with 3 total morons. And I think, and actually, I think part of my diagnosis was also to not to understand from Lisa's side as well. You know, like, because it must be insane to live with. I mean, I can only just about handle my kids because they're so insane. So Lisa's got to handle 3 of us. And I think you're right. So Sinks and Lisa were always good counterparts as well. They supported one another. And I think, you know, I was very lucky. So, you know, if this, you know, I was successful with Sinks and with all the people because they allowed me to be me, and they picked up the pieces. I think if I was on my own, there's no chance I would have, you know, I wouldn't have done this on my own. I mean, I may have tried, but I wouldn't. You need both. In our company, we needed both, you know, and in life, I guess you need both. And, but you know, it's funny that I was lucky in that some people probably have, there's obviously varying forms of ADHD, and, you know, I think I was lucky in that my ADHD took more of a enthusiastic route as opposed to really annoying, perhaps. I mean, actually, maybe maybe everyone else did disagree with that, but I think that enthusiasm is what was rubbed off on people. I think people really enjoyed that. And I think, and I come back to like why I felt that became a real burden eventually. It's like, I don't want to still be involved in running a big business, but that doesn't mean I don't love it. It doesn't mean I don't think it can thrive, and I want it to thrive. So pulling myself out of something that I was very much the talisman, the sort of the mascot for, without damaging the ship was well, for me, it felt difficult. Perhaps I was, you know, making it up in my head. It wasn't, you know, as soon as I was gone, everyone's celebrating, but it was yeah, it was crazy. I mean, and now to answer your question that we started like 40 minutes ago that you asked, where am I now? Like, I think it's been, I think there was a blessing, but it was part of a puzzle of just something I haven't been able to really understand as such. I mean, I think I've just sort of given up trying to search for this holy grail of whatever the fuck it is. You know, I think, you know, I think I talked about it there, but I take a thing called Elvance, which I guess in every country there's different forms of medication you can take. For me, I've been taking that for like 5 years. I don't have to take it, but I enjoy taking it. You know, the feeling I get is it just sort of allows me to be more at peace with what I'm doing, as opposed to jumping phonetically across everything. But where I am right now is like, yeah, I was lost for probably two. I mean, I sort of extracted myself away from Us2 over the last 5 years, of which, to the point where actually no one even talks to me anymore, which in itself was weird. But I think, you know, I'm at a stage now where, I mean, I literally don't have to do anything. And I think, but I got pretty sad, you know, actually it didn't help. It was like, I mean, I tried doing lots of things. I definitely didn't want to start a business again. That was the last thing I wanted to do. And I finally had time to just be on my own, you know, going from a person running a huge company to, or in my head, it was huge, to just being on my own a lot. And which was quite weird for me, because I actually really like being around people. But eventually, you know, I now realize that when I'm at my happiest actually is when I'm like all in on something, which is a bit annoying, because now I've been building this house for like 2 years. Well, I'm not personally building it, but I'm there all day, every day. I'll be there after this. And I'm doing it with Lisa actually, which is really nice. So I'm actually building something together. So yeah, I mean,
so more personal projects.
it's a more personal project, exactly. But I guess I sort of move, I think I just need to feel like I'm surrounded by people building, like I never did. I don't know if I never actually, I mean, at the very early days, I would have been designing, but very quickly I realized that other people were better than me. And my passion was supporting other people to be better. So I think that's what I enjoy doing on the building site, plus watching how people do things. But it's been crazy though. I mean, I find that I need different forms of medication throughout the day. If I put it down, my life feels like I have 3 days in one day. In that I get up really early and I really enjoy that. I love my coffee, coffee, caffeine, matcha, whatever, anything that gives me a buzz. It really helps me. That combined with my L-Vance that I take really works. And I take antidepressants as well, which is weird because it's not, I think the depression was just, it wasn't so much like I was depressed in what I assumed a depression meant. Like I could always get out of bed, etc. But I just didn't feel, when the company was no more for me, I just felt very empty. So I started taking that as well, like 3 or 4 years ago. And then I get to my afternoon and then everything's worn off a bit and I feel a bit like, Christ, like 2 to 5 is a bit of like dead time. I don't really like it. But then like 5 till whenever, stupidly I drink or I smoke weed too much. And those things they just help me just land in the evening. Because I'm usually going so over the top and going all over. My brain is just melted because I've done so many things in a day.
The good that we talk in the morning. Here in Japan, it's already after 5.
I suddenly thought that when I kept on moving the times around, that actually, crikey, you're on the other side of the universe.
Good that I catch you in the morning, huh?
I think that's another thing that with ADHD for me is that I learned that that I can only do so much in a day. I never knew that in when in the early days. So when I was traveling around to all the studios, I would be like on like hype mode all the time, and then in the evenings we would go out. And I think I didn't understand that actually I benefit from having downtime and on my own time, which is probably why I went so extreme when I left ustwo, that I just went to almost like hermit. But now I understand that in a day I can only achieve so much. So if I want, like, for example, if I have this meeting, then I don't really want to set up another meeting, like, as intense, like 3 hours later, because that would probably, so, that becoming aware of sort of my frailties are as important as knowing what my superpowers are.
I remember that there was this phase where you stopped drinking. You were very vocal about it. And then you went, to run 100 kilometers or something like that.
Miles. It's a mile.
100 miles. And then and that was like, that was before you found out about the ADHD topics. Like,
you're right. That's a good point.
I think that was.
Yeah.
That's just that if you're doing this kind of sport and if you take away the alcohol, I think that there's this new clarity. And I think for me, didn't went in that extreme. I mean, I stopped drinking as well, but then that was just allowing me to wake up in the morning and realize better, like, is this now a hangover? Is this not a hangover? And then I can like clearly rule out the hangover part. And then I can understand, okay, why do I then still feel tired? And then for me, breathing was a big thing. I have asthma all my life. Then at some point, the doctor really told me, like, you have a chronic sinus infection. Like, we need to get your nose fixed. So we got the nose fixed, and then okay, even more to like a kind of a feeling. Okay, this is how probably other people can breathe or feel. So
wow.
And then just simple things like that, right? But
that's that's nicely reminded actually that I hadn't actually, to be honest, I hadn't actually thought that that's why I'd done that with the alcohol. But actually, you're right. If you get down to almost like a base level of like who actually.
After the 100 miles, you were definitely at base level.
Yeah, crikey, man, like you're right. And I guess in that stage though, I was more searching probably that the extreme running was about doing something on my own. You know, I think I felt I've done something with us two, but of course, us two is a success because of everybody. And I've always been surrounded by people who are basically picking up all the pieces or supporting or pushing. And I think the not drinking was something I could do on my own. And perhaps that, you know, it was about seeing who I actually was in my soul. It turns out I was not very fun, so I went back to drinking. But no, not really. But and then the running was definitely about just proving that I could do something on my own completely. But also, you're right, take the mind back to zero.
Yeah.
You know, I was very scared of, like, I wanted, not scared, I wanted to know, yeah, what was at the end of that, or in that journey of 100 miles. You know, it took like 22 hours, and actually I don't think I learned anything, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the fact I did it. But you're right, but actually all these different pieces were coming together. I was building towards becoming 40. Maybe I'd 40 that year.
Turning 40 this year.
Yeah, and I remember I'd done a talk at the Do Lectures, which is a sort of a community in Wales that run by David Hyatt, and I think he'd asked me to do a talk at one of these events, and it became, I think that's when he asked me to do that talk, and it was going to be like a year later. I think, funny enough, I remember saying to him, and I didn't know did I know? I can't remember if I had ADHD then or not, if I had been diagnosed. But I remember saying to him, I'll only do the talk if you let me if I want it. He had sent a mail saying, you've got to do that, you know, I want you to do the talk of your life. This is your chance to do something special. You know, I want to, you know, prepare to do the best talk of your life. And I was like, David, I'll do the talk, but only if I don't prepare, only if you accept that I'm just going to turn up on the day and I'm going to talk about whatever it is. You know, the theme will obviously about life or whatever, but I don't want to prepare. And actually, and I did do that, and I hadn't drunk, and it went. I mean, I'm sure it could have been better, but it was genuine. And I think coming out of that, people, you know, I think I liked the fact that I was willing to throw myself on a stage with no preparation, and that helped me understand that actually, I think for me, the idea, almost whether preparation is fear, I don't like to prepare, because I feel like it's ungenuine to myself. Like, I've always wanted to be just real. Like, you sent questions, I didn't read them because I just don't want to have any artificial answer. I want it to be in the moment. There's downsides to that as well, but anyway, so I think doing that big talk, where there's a lot of people there, and I had to like just wake up and do the talk, was scary. The running was scary, the not drinking was scary, but all these things built, you know, going to see a therapist, talking about having a therapist, all these things built to I guess the diagnosis, and I guess the medication does help. And do you take any medication?
So I haven't tried the medication yet, but I think I found the sports that allow me to kind of feel something like that. And I'm sure I will try the medication at some point.
BJ, what do you mean? You say sports as in sports?
So like, I live near the coast, so I can go surfing. And then when you're in that cold water and you get pushed around by these waves, it's a great way of waking up in the morning. So you feel something for sure.
There we go. I mean, I totally get that.
There's then also high intensity training. That is something that I really enjoy. Just, I think, for that feeling like during and afterwards. And then snowboarding is another like low sport for me, where I'm actually also mostly going hiking, like split boarding. So you walk up the mountain and you feel like that's just as much fun as riding down. And you actually like, I look at it as an active meditation. So
Mate, I love hearing what you're saying.
Just sitting, like just doing the meditation, that I realized is just making me think more about stuff. So what I kind of enjoy is this active stuff. So either hiking up the mountain or even just the breath work where I actually have to really focus on my breathing, and then I actually have to do nothing for like 2 minutes and just hold my breath, that's already like much more relaxing than having to, focus on my thoughts or something. But yeah, but I think that medication is super interesting, and I just maybe have just felt like with therapy sessions, for example, I kind of wanted to get to certain answers, like with prototyping, you kind of want to answer like one question, and then I kind of like get to this point, and then now I feel like, okay, like right now it feels pretty good. So if I'm stuck again, then maybe I try the medication stuff. But right now it kind of works. But it
makes sense though.
Came a lot with readjusting kind of my setup, and now after like 1.5 years of transitioning kind of like out of my old job, preaching that a bit with like I was consulting startups in Tokyo about design topics and so on. That was like cool, like as a side thing. But now I'm kind of diving again into like entrepreneurship, building like now this Neurospicy Founders community, and then building this kind of I sort of describe it like it's called soft, and it's kind of what the AI version of a design studio would be. So like really automating as much as possible of the creative taste making kind of. But that's really like that's kind of like how I would reinvent the whole design studio stuff. And I was in parent leave when ChatGPT came out, and then I knew I'm not gonna go back. This is not gonna be the same, and it was not. And then now I feel a bit like, okay, like the AI is first of all maybe the kind of co-founder that I need, like because that's very clear thinking, very structured thinking, very like just delivering, and I can explore even more, but I don't need to like mind the feeling of that person. That
I love. I mean, mate, that's incredible.
No, like
all you said so much in there. I'm just like, it's hard for me not to try to break into everything you say. So it's good. So I was in. You said so many good things there. Like to the sport stuff, I guess I always felt like the running. I know that the running for me is a good way of feeling better, really. But funny enough, I equally I haven't done any sort of exercise for like 3 months in some ways, which is counter to what I know. But it's because at the same time, I'm so excited about what I'm doing with the house that I can't not be there. So it's almost like I've got that feeling of when I built ustwo, but it's detrimental in some ways to my own health. But I mean, I feel like as long as I'm not fat and I don't get moobs, I'm all right. But to the question about, well, I asked you about medication. I guess for me, like I was very quick to want the medication. It's almost like I wanted to see what it was, and without a shadow of a doubt, there was a little bit of apprehension when I started, because I'm thinking, what happens if it changes me and I'm not who I was? I mean, for me, it did absolutely none of that. All it allowed me to do is get into a very cozy. That's how I feel. Like, for example, if I just took another one now, because I take like 60 milligrams of it, but I split it in the mornings, and it makes me feel like I very much enjoy this little cocoon with you now, and us talking about things. And it doesn't it lasts to like 3 or 4 hours, let's say, and I think I just find that's my thinking time. And I did try the meditation, but for me, I think. And for a while, I think it really worked. And I tried the cold water, and I tried the breathing, and they all, I actually got a lot out of all of them. But I'm not very good at sticking with one thing. So I go all in it, burn it, like learn everything I can, and fuck off to the next thing. So that's where. And then I guess when I hear that you're starting this. And then you're getting curious still about what is the future of agency with, your new co-founder, ChatGPT. In some way, I guess my fear with all of that, because I guess the question people would always ask me was like, what are you doing next? Or do you want to start something new? And I think my fear is that I'm not very good at not being black or white. And I think the fear for me was if I went back into doing something like a company again, it would take all my time. But actually, weirdly enough, it's like the very thing that gives me energy, people, is the very thing that I can't really handle in the same way. So when you talk there about ChatGPT, the co-founder you always wanted, I think luckily my co-founder thinks he was a bit like a robot anyway. So he was a bit like AI. I joke, he's my best mate, but he was. You're right. I use ChatGPT in a different way to you, actually, because I heard you say something like it's almost a structure. It can be structured, and I guess you were talking about the output, perhaps, of it, or it could do things that you didn't want to do. Whereas I have this little place on the coast that I go and just spend time in my little workshop, just drilling things and smashing stuff up. I mean, literally, it's a loony house. I'm only allowed one small room of the whole house, but I just smash everything. I buy really cheap drills and anything secondhand. I smash everything up. The reason I say it is when I drive down, it takes like 4 hours. And my favorite thing on earth, although I keep running it out of whatever the credits, is I just talk, the talk mode. And the fact now that I can actually just talk about anything, ask it any completely irrelevant question. I love the fact that it has no issue with me jumping from subject to subject. So I use it for the opposite of you, almost. Like I can be as unstructured as I want with it, and it's my best mate. It's brilliant. I
really.
But sometimes I think, what is us like if
that is like your monologue podcast that you used to run.
Yeah, exactly.
I looked it up and then I realized the last one was maybe 2020 or something. Like
I did a number of things. Funny enough, I did.
But 400 episodes or something.
Oh, yeah. Well, the funny thing with that is that, and that was another story. That was another piece of my development towards ADHD was almost going into things. So the idea that was scared me. So I didn't like the idea of creating a structured podcast because I knew I would never stick to it. So I eventually realized that I could just talk to my phone, and I like small spaces, dark spaces for some reason. And I would just go down into my basement. Well, when I say basement, I'm talking about this big. And I would just sit at the back of it, and I would just talk to my phone and just release it that minute. Now, funny enough, I did 400 episodes, and I actually pretty much quite early on, although I allowed myself to not believe it, realized that don't think anyone was listening to it. I reckon it was saying that a few thousand people were listening to it, but I think SoundCloud was full of bots in those days. And I remember by about episode 300, I was testing it to the max. I would be saying, "Hey guys, all I'm asking is one of you emails me with just an emoji in your email, just to prove that someone's there." And I swear no one did it. So, but I actually changed it a few times. I think there is still one. The later ones were called, I think it's called, it's either called Barney the Horse, or it's called Chow Mein, or it's called something like that. But they started to go quite insane. But I really enjoyed just shooting the breeze about anything I could. But that was another thing. It was just like, I think I just, without knowing that perhaps ADHD meant being spontaneous, I was leaning into my spontaneity. I no longer had, when I came up away from ustwo, I didn't have to think about other people in the same way. Before, I used to in my early days of ustwo, I was like, would wear wigs and I would drive around on scooters, and my interviews, would be like, again, me being extreme to Sinks's other extreme. And that became a bit of almost like a character that I was playing. But eventually, as we got bigger and more serious, I think that maybe that was no longer helpful to the company. If anything, it maybe made us look stupid. So I was having to I wanted to be playful and have fun and just not care, but I couldn't because I was restricted by other people and I cared about them. So I think when I came away from ustwo, even though I still own some of it, it was so freedom for me that to just be able to have a podcast that was no format, anything I wanted. And actually, although I say no one listened, I built a few let's say 10 people listened to it. And I built relationships with them. So I was almost doing a bit like what you're doing, but only on email, like just talking about things with them. And just I'm sure you get an energy now out of building your platform. I guess for both of us, it's still like building something. Maybe it doesn't have to be about design, but the idea of building something that helps people in some ways, kind of what is in both of us.
Absolutely.
I think it's like that anyway.
Yeah. It was interesting for me. I was maybe because also my wife tells me like not to be too impulsive in certain things, but like I had more than 2 years between getting diagnosed and talking to like anybody than my close friends about it.
Wow.
And I think that because
why
that
was
could
that?
like I knew that it can become like quite an identifying thing. Like now you're the ADHD guy or something.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, good point.
I'm like, I know I'm more than that. So it's like, I was kind of wondering how to do this at some point, but I knew that I want to build this founders community. And then I was in Helsinki at the Sluts like more than 2 years ago, and I was organizing like an event there to kind of meet people from that spectrum in person there, but I didn't pull the trigger button on that. Like I kind of backed up from this. I just ended up talking to a few people that I met there. But then it took me another 2 years to launch the community. And now, of course, like now it got super nice responses from individuals and from people that I never met. And then now it's like a clear thing, like, okay, like just gonna roll with this. And it's more about the conversation about the topic, not about me being that expert or something. Like I'm just figuring it out with like everybody else. And that's actually like, there's so many people out there like that. So it's something for them. So yeah.
That's great. It's interesting, like hearing your story there, because I think what I've definitely, you say there about the, I guess a concern was the labeling, and it's a good point, because I think there is no, I don't think there's any one clear definition of what it is or what, what, or a, but I mean, there's different behaviors that, we could show, but I think without a doubt, everyone's different, plus the fact that we've all got different inputs coming in from other places. So I guess, I think I almost like, I guess I as soon as I got the diagnosis, I would be amazed if there wasn't a tweet that second saying, what a joke, I've got ADHD, what the fuck does it mean, sort of thing. And using that, I think I've always just been about this, like, fuck, just, I'm not even thinking, I just say, I don't care, I just like put it out there, I'm not bothered. Whereas I guess your approach, you find it was actually, like take the time.
To understand what this actually means now.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly, which is good. I guess that, so you can have ADHD, but not still but still be very much in control, which you were, well, in certain decisions perhaps.
But you can like at least I went back and I kind of like scanned almost every hour of my life, like what was going on in that moment, like what led to this kind of action of mine in that moment when I was, I don't know, 18 or 25 or like, and then understanding, okay, it all connects back to that thing. Like, and that was the crazy part, like how I don't have a good memory actually of stuff like before maybe at age of 17 or something, but
no, funny you say that, I don't either.
Like, I don't know if it has to do with my parents got divorced when I was like 16, 17, and it kind of like erased everything before that. Like, it was a cool childhood and everything, but like only remember some holidays maybe. And, but then after that, like, becoming more like a young adult there, I just analyzed like, hey, what was going on? And that was one of the things that I took time for, maybe, like, and but then you realize about like what I find super interesting is like in which ways ADHD shows, right? Like so many things that you might have just the general knowledge, which is like, okay, can kind of like not concentrate but hyper focus at the same time. But then like in what other ways it shows? It's like, for example, this about memory, like there's this phenomenon about like there's people in your life that are not part of your life anymore, but you think about them every day. And that kind of stuff is one thing, for example, that I relate now back to ADHD. And then, and then just so many
you think that was
other small things that are not obvious, but
you think that's, I mean, is that like, because you feel like there's something unfinished business, or is something you haven't said to them or something? Why do you think that? Why do
I
you
think
think
it's
that
to
you
do with
think
these
about
things like that, you know, our brain cannot sometimes like figure out what's important and what's not important. So like kind of like it's all important. So
Yes, yes.
like declaring taxes and funny cat videos are like same important. Like,
You know what? That is well reminded
and like
for
people
me.
that are in their life now and people that were in their life at some point, they're not like equally important anymore, but somewhat like the brain maybe doesn't really filter that like that. So
That's brilliant, Boris. I'm sorry jumping in there, but it's good to hearing you say that, because I think, you know, you're saying familiar things that I've heard Lise say to me before, where you're right, where she struggles with the fact that she feels like I put almost more like emotional care into someone I might have met online for like 2 minutes as my own kid, for example. Like there's like an imbalance of care. And I think that to that same principle, I think what eventually I recognized with us two is that I was dealing with people's emotions. Like we could do very well, for example, win an award, whatever the fuck we cared about at the time. But if someone said they were leaving, that would break me. It would be like, it would take me days to recover of like this idea that somebody was leaving, even if it was a good reason they were leaving, you know. And I think,
and everybody leaves at some point, right?
And everyone, exactly, and everyone did leave at some point with ours, just all at the same time. But shit, just broken the fucking plants. But I think that's something I still find really difficult. And I think therapy definitely helped in regulating emotions, whereby I actually find it very difficult on the building site. You know, we're building an entire house from the ground up, but yet I find it hard not to get extremely emotional about the tiniest thing. Like, that doesn't, you know, if I have to keep bringing myself back, okay, things go wrong, there's a big house build here, don't worry about 1 centimeter. But again, it's almost the same. If someone just says one comment, that ruins my entire week. But I guess in knowing that we've got ADHD now and ChatGPT, which I use very much as a therapist and a lot cheaper, I'm able to process this stuff better now, and at least step back from it, even though I can still feel it, and try to teach my kids it a bit as well, because I can see it in them. They have will, but that's that. Sorry, I totally broke your talk, but it's
no, not at all.
It's
then I like this back and forth. We built a house 2 years ago in Japan. Maybe things work differently than in the UK, but it's like it was built. The actual building was like 4 months. Like, but it's because somebody was coming. The carpenter came in morning 7 o'clock and left 7 at night, and was doing that for 7 days per week. So that's how a house gets built.
Fantastic,
4 months.
fantastic.
But it was planning phase of like 4 months with like 4-hour meetings, 5-hour meetings. I never experienced 4-hour meetings in the agency context, and they were in Japanese, and like I had to go for walks.
Oh God, I remember those meetings in Japan. I mean, they were loving meetings. I mean, I could never do meetings for long. I could never sit in the same position. But you, so you only had to do the 4-hour meetings once you were building the house, not in the agency.
So like,
oh no, you did.
I didn't have like 4-hour meetings in agency context. They were always like, because my default calendar invite was like 25 minutes or something, you know, but then the house builder was taking like 4-hour meetings, and we talked about the same, you know, curtains that we talked about last week. And so on. But
I find that. Did you like that or not like it?
I didn't like that at all.
No, I hated that. I actually fired 2 architects who are complete jokes, and over the last 2 years, and mostly A, because they're incompetent, but B, like me, I just love to make the decisions on site. Like, that's what I wanted. I wanted just to change things there and then.
Do you have a plan now? How it's going to look?
Well, the plan is just very much for free. I mean, there was clearly a sort of a level of what we were building, and but I think for me to see it, I just want to be around people who are solving the problem. I don't want to be talking hypothetics. And there was was you just saying something? Fuck, sorry, I totally
Yeah.
broke your what did you were saying? You were saying,
House building.
yeah, it was something. Oh fuck it. It was something. It was something amazing. It will never come out of my brain. It'll come later when you're asking me
Yeah.
another question. But
I wanted to ask you about like more like how did you manage then the company at that time? Like in my case, we like I did something that I didn't know at that time was ADHD kind of triggered. It was I created an operating system that our company ran on, and it was
one,
built on like 4 pillars or something. It was like it was self-organization. So I wanted
brilliant.
not to manage anybody. I wanted them to
Yeah,
manage themselves.
perfect.
The second one was like routines. Then it was feedback culture. And then it was like mindfulness. That was our company operating system. And that worked really well. And I was like, in hindsight, I asked ChatGPT, create a management system by an ADHD manager. And it came up basically with that same stuff. And I was so mind blown. That was a really funny moment. And then I realized, so I think what actually, because our people are like designers and engineers, so it worked really well with that target audience. And they, even though we don't work together anymore, they still sometimes bring up this topic about the operating system we had and how they enjoyed that. And I think just like we have like more recognition for like education for kids with special needs, but then people go into university or go into jobs, and then it's like that's out of the window. So I think what maybe has to do with the industries we moved in is that a lot of people are actually neurodivergent, and so it's suitable to be managed by at least like one of the founders who maybe has the same thing, like to build an environment where they feel comfortable and might also fit actually for neurotypical people. So maybe did you also run on an operating system, or like how do you look back?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it doesn't sound dissimilar in that. I mean, I don't know if we would have referred to it as an operating system. That actually is a better way of referring to it. I think, when we were smaller, our operating system were our values, but our values were not something that we had explicitly talked about. It was our actions. I think, it was only as we got bigger that we were sort of almost taught by other people who sort of helped us grow mentally, that you have to sort of be a bit more explicit. Like we knew how we operated, and our operating system was, I think, it's just doing great work, working hard, being normal, being friendly, caring, that sort of, and that was built in me in things. But I think as you get bigger and bigger, and you're not, and other people are managing other people, you've got to be more explicit. So we definitely went through this. I think our operating system became our values, but even that is quite difficult because values are quite vague in some ways, and they mean different things to other people. Like we had one that meant use the freedom, which I guess is not dissimilar to your first one you mentioned, where self-managed or whatever.
Self-organization,
self-organization. But of course, use the freedom can mean so many different things. Like how does someone come in? Actually, eventually it meant people thought that they could do what they wanted, but we had to run a business and make money. So I think, I think we were perpetually changed. Although our values never changed, the name, the way we worded it changed. We tried different ways to come up with an operating system, I guess. And I think, I think that's, we successfully, I think we got to what I would say a proper company, 20 years later, by making a lot of mistakes. And I think our operating system probably was more just live by example, like we were just, that's why we burnt out, probably just because we were just constantly trying to do right. And if we made mistakes, we owned up to it. We talked about it openly. So it was just, I think it was just being that. But I think the problem is, I think because we built this company, it became almost like we would always refer to it as a youth club, or we have been, because if you look back, it was 25-year-olds, basically hundreds of them, growing up together over 20 years, and some of them are still there 20 years later. And actually what I realized is we were lucky that we were in a field that's exciting, that's interesting, that attracts young people, that attracts curious people, and actually we grew up with them. So we have, I think, one of the things I wouldn't say it's proud as such, but
you can be proud.
I guess, I'm just trying to wonder if it's more that I think we counted the other day, we had a leaving. I don't see the ustwo crew that much. I mean, I focus more on the game side still, but even that to a little extent, because we've got people running it. I went to a leaving drinks of someone who'd been there for 18 years. And, we talked there about the fact that I think there was 22 different couples who got married and had kids, through ustwo, as in, I mean, and in some ways it's like, I'm proud of the fact that we created a company that people generally found friendship or love, and whether that, doesn't necessarily add commercial success, but I like the fact that ustwo was a place where, certain people wanted to be. And so I think, as to your operating system, I think we had to adapt as we got bigger, and the market and other companies like yourself caught up. Well, sorry, not caught up, but we'd been going when a time when no one cared about mobile, and then suddenly, and then we did well because we were in mobile when it started, and no one else had necessarily been as ready. And then, years later, everyone was as good. And then we realized that we built this company that was big, that really was almost fluke. We didn't have many processes as such. So we had to start re-engineering the company to be a bit more professional. We were always professional, but this was a bit more of a sort of, okay, it was no longer about founder-led, going to the, drinking in the evenings together. In the same way, it was like, crikey, it's not about us, it's about our clients. And I think we had to work hard on that for many years. And I think that probably was the struggle for me, was that we had to put processes in, we had to be more focused on how to we had to be more strategic, and that didn't really work with my brain. And so I probably fought against that in some ways. So I represent, I think, where I really struggled, I know you didn't ask this, but where I'm looking back now, where I struggled was that a lot of people, even to this day, saw me as what ustwo used to be and expected me to still, but what I had already allowed the company to change. I wanted to change because I wanted to thrive. And so I wasn't trying to still be the company of 10 years ago. In fact, it was the last thing I wanted. That was a time and space. And I think that's why I almost had to pull away.
What were they seeing in you? Like, what do you mean by that? Like, what did you represent, kind of?
I think I represented
the fun, or like
less so much fun as such, but more because I had driven very much a lot of the own IP. It was, don't get me wrong, the client service we loved, and that allowed us to take risks on our own stuff. And and I think for a stage of ustwo, we weren't sure what we were. Like, were we an agency for our clients, or were we an agency for ourselves? And we tried to be one, and then and actually they're different, as they're completely different. And I think, probably for 5 years in that middle of the 20 years, or in 2000, leading up to 2014 with Monument Valley, there was a lot of confusion, I think, in ustwo about what we were, and I represented that, and Sinks represented the client side. And I think that, and we had to re-break that apart. So what I represented was someone that wasn't so much about the rules, was with more punk, if you had to use an awful word, and I think a lot of people might have joined because that's what they thought they were joining, and there was a lot of that, but it had to be balanced. And so it was I think that's what people would. And so when we had to put in more management as such, because you did have to have that, although we were still trying to be autonomous, we wanted people to be self-managing, but not everyone can self-manage, and actually you have to have a process that allows people to self-manage. And I think if you start from zero and self-manage, you could probably do a very good job of that. But we were having to re-engineer that, and that took years as well to educate. So there was just, us was just a very complicated place where it was a lot of emotion. A lot of people cared, but their caring was also damaging the company. People, a lot of people wanted it to be what it was and weren't letting it change. And you know, our work became better as a consequence of the more focused. You know, we broke apart the games company, became ustwo Games, separate business. We reminded everyone at ustwo Studios that you're here because you want to create great products for clients. If you don't want to do that, that's not why. You know, we can't no longer pretend. And so that's that. So that, and I think, you know, I would, when I didn't know about the ADHD and I was just pure enthusiasm, you know, I was causing problems, you know, because I was the one who's always saying yes, and Saints had to say no. So it was, it was, I mean, crikey, it was a complicated time, full of emotion. You know, I wouldn't change anything, but bloody bonkers, absolutely bonkers.
But you can be really proud, because what happened was that you already had a system in place that allowed you then to step out, and then the company thrived after you. You know,
because
got out of the operation. So I think that is like a big accomplishment. That and then also that kind of in combination with your co-founder, that you guys were able to do these decisions in that way, because that's one of the motivations behind me starting this community, is that the people become really successful with their companies because of that superpowers, and then they hit the ceiling because of that bigger responsibility. All of a sudden they have to, you know, answer to a boardroom, and then they have hundreds of employees, and it's really like a few of the people that I talk to about these topics, that similar journey, and then they are not able to do it anymore, and hopefully they have a co-founder like you had, and you know, a structure in place. So
I'm just,
then it kind of breaks down on them, and that can also mean the end of the company.
The clever thing the clever thing, again, without knowing, is that we never, although we were the founders, and you know, ustwo, he talks about probably ustwo. Actually, from day one, we looked to other people to be, and you know, we were there. Our company succeeded because people who were extremely good in their areas were given space to do that. And although we were the founders, we were very much trying to be back office in many ways. Like, I think so actually, you know, we brought a CEO in, we brought a chairman in, like, as financially things started to rattle, you know, 10 years back or whatever, and we started to realize it wasn't as easy to be a commercial business as it used to be. You know, eventually we brought Kath on board, and she really helped us grow up, and she helped us understand that we needed a CEO. And once we brought a CEO in, and now Nikki runs it, it just allowed us to thrive, because we could be good at what we did, and we didn't have to be that person. So actually, by the time I left, you know, you know, other than culturally me leaving, it had zero impact. You know, I mean, it probably my ability to do anything on a commercial level was probably zero from day 2 of ustwo. You know, so in many ways that was the beauty. You know, I think with my powers, with my ADHD version, I really thrive on knowing that somebody is extremely good, and I want them to be the spotlighted person, and I want to encourage them to be better. I get my energy from that. I don't want to be like, I think for many years I sort of wanted to be, I probably thought that I wanted to be the center of attention and stuff, but actually that was just my brain telling me the wrong thing. I actually didn't want to be that. I would rather be behind the scenes, which you wouldn't necessarily have got from my videos, but yeah, fucking oh god, it's good to thinking about. I mean, it's funny, this is the first talk I've done for years really about ustwo. I mean, I haven't, because I know you didn't ask me this, but like the identity to change was the hardest thing for me to sort of, it took 2 or 3 years really of like, if I'm not ustwo, I'm nobody. But you know what I realized, actually, I don't know if this was for you, is that virtually all of the friends that, I mean, I consider everyone a friend. You're like, we're talking now, that's a friendship for me. And this is what Lisa struggles with. Like, she feels you have to have grown up with them for 30 years for them to be a friend. And for me, it's like, if someone is vibes with you at the time, you know, that's your friendship of the time. And oh fuck, I totally forgot what the fuck I said. It was so good. That was about friendship. What the hell do we just say? Friendship vibe. Oh
You
my
work with a lot
God,
of friends.
this is a thing.
Yeah,
This is
we're already
the
in
down.
for a while now, so like I totally like.
No, but it's, oh God, I had that. It was something about that was going to be helpful to other people.
Podcast interviews take like 3 hours these days, and I'm like, who's watching that? But like, this is already more than an hour, so really don't feel pressure. Like, this is really
No. Well, I forget that it's even pressure, but it was identity. That was it.
Identity.
Sorry, that was it.
Didn't talk about us two for many years. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you got me now. It's my identity was us two, but then I realized that actually a lot of the people that for the last few years that I had of us two, when I was even in my prime, they never really talked to me about us two. Like, a lot of my friendship came from, you know, friends that I lived around through the family, through the kids, and I suddenly dawned on me that, wait a sec, all these people do actually like me, not because I'm successful in the design industry. They don't even know what that is. They don't actually care. It's like, whoa, okay, so maybe my identity isn't us two, or I think it's us two. I think that my success in us two is what people know me for. But actually, when I really wrote it down, which I never do, of course, it wasn't that. And I think that was a turning point for me, where I just realized that, you know, we're on this life just to deal with life and try to enjoy it as much as possible. And I could apply myself to anything, and I could still, I don't know, now I forgot where I was going, but I'm basically just saying I spent too long wasting my time thinking that my identity was the business that ultimately wasn't, I guess. So.
No, I really enjoy, like, what I always enjoyed about you was, like, it looks to me that you're really like curious, finding your potential, and then going all in. And then, like, also there is soon the next thing, but like you for sure go all in, and I just find it so refreshing. And now we know why part of it is, but I just this is not everybody is like that, and I think that is like such a cool thing. So
yeah, definitely.
That's the next hobby waiting around the corner, you know. Hopefully not too expensive equipment to purchase.
Well, no, you know that. Well, the good thing about it is that my current hobby is all about not spending any money. Is by buying the cheapest secondhand things and trying to fix them.
That's awesome.
I think, but I will say, on the downside of, I think, my awareness of my being is that I don't trust myself to like something for too long. So I almost holds me back a little bit now. Whereas before, my naivety was there. I would go all in on something. I'd think that I was going to love it forever. But then I'm not doing it.
Both of us have long-term relationships. Like, I'm
true.
with my wife more than 20 years. Then we both have been with our companies for, me for a decade, you for 2 decades. But it's like, there's this, then friends from back in the childhood. So it's like, there's also those things, that
I think that
I'm going to the same place for my holidays. Every summer I go back to Finland, for example. Like, I don't go new places as much.
No, you know what? I don't really go to new places either. That's funny to say that, because you're right. That is important to recognize that, because I do think that ADHD. Well, you said it, I say it, so that's everybody. You need, my wife, 25 years, 20, whatever, there are certain, people, there is a structure in there. It's like a backbone that allows us to go over there, but we always come back to this. And I think without that, I think could be a quite sad space. And which is in some ways why I guess forums like this are really important, because it allows people who maybe don't have that same structure to start to have something a bit like that, or feel like a sense of community.
Yeah, it's maybe not that easy anymore today, right? Like, to build this deeper friendships, like as we could maybe before the digital age when we were younger. Like,
But that's why the ChatGPT's there. It is a scary time. You know what? I think to myself, crikey, who would want to build a company? It would be quite exciting, but scary time. Like, imagine if we were starting from scratch now when you started into this new world. I mean, I guess we would just adapt to the current, it's just a different technology. You know, we adapted to mobile, we adapted to whatever web before that. But it would be a fascinating time to be, you know, this world. It's both scary and exciting. God.
Like,
Yeah, man.
maybe before I let you go, it's like, is there some smaller like personal hacks or like some kind of routine that helps you to stay productive and balanced? Like some really like might be a small thing but powerful.
Well, I mean, I guess that it's interesting. I don't think I've ever considered myself productive. I think I was probably anti-production. I mean, I do a lot of things. I'm a doer for sure, but I don't think there's much. Sometimes I do backwards as opposed to forwards. I mean, there's the obvious things that I definitely know help. You know, without a shadow of doubt, the running helps. But you know, for me, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, I find weed in the evenings very, very important. And you know, it's not for everyone, but actually, I just find that for me, it works with my mind in a way that just gets me even more curious. So I do a lot of my, when I say research, I mean watching YouTube, but I just find that it allows me to be a bit more focused in a very curious way. So for me, that is a hack that I use. Now, equally, I have to balance that, you know, so that's why I get up really early and go running, which is not good because it's extremes. I mean, sleep, you have to have sleep. I realized now I know that I can differentiate between feeling low and depressed versus just tired. And so I know if I've had a bad sleep, I know that I've got to write that day off. So that's basic stuff. But that's all. I mean, I find caffeine for me is extremely good. For those that might be lost, I mean, I take a drug called Elvance, which I say is it's an incredible. It's a stimulant that doesn't make me do anything differently, but I just feel more content. Apparently, that mixed with my escitalopram, which is my antidepressant, works even better. And I find if you put coffee on top of it, you've got an hour. I mean, that's when I'll be sending emails or messaging and trying to get people going when I'm on my high. I mean, I just think being curious for me is an exciting thing. Like, I did a breathing workshop recently. My wife got me down to, and it wasn't life changing at all because I didn't do it ever again. But in that moment, I don't think I've ever felt a high like it, and I just felt good about life, and it just reminded me that. But well, tell you what, give me some of your hacks, and then I might remind me of other things. So I'm not thinking of the good ones yet. It's hard to think on the fly, I think, as well.
I think for me, it's just allowing myself to a free schedule, and then I can go more with the flow. So now sometimes after taking care of the kid in the morning and like dropping him off at daycare at around 9 o'clock, then I would maybe just decide, okay, looks like good weather, let's go surfing. Then I have the freedom to do that now, which is super cool. And then I would meet my like retired surfer friend Tomo there, and he's like in his 60s, and he would be there every day, so I can just easily meet him. Then we would chat about different stuff in the water, and then I would come back, and you know, it takes me a bit to clean up stuff and like, you know, get some food, and then it's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I can start with some work. Then I realize I have to pick up my kid, then I get again thrown out of my routine, but then it's like bedtime and so on, and then I start working again, and then it's like, okay, now I'm allowing myself to work, because I know the next day I don't have to go into an office and have to function.
Yes.
So it's like just allowing that, and then I realized I worked 8 hours at night, but like that is maybe feeling a bit more chaotic. And for a long time I tried to tell myself I'm not a night person, I'm a morning person, but you can kind of be both and have maybe a little bit more freestyle approach to this. So that is maybe one way of realizing and then simply, like, I think more mental thing is like not having to prove something anymore to myself.
Yes.
I mean, that is hard when you're younger, but like, they're like
that one, mate, boy, is a. I think that's the.
I had this
That's the
conversation
it's the ongoing.
with another founder friend, and he was like, Boris, you gotta build something, man. Gotta build, like, we gotta have like some big goal, like. And I was like, but better if you can just wake up, look in the mirror, and say like, hey, everything is cool. Like, I don't need to build something big right now. Like,
mate, you've said it
I don't
perfectly
know, like,
right. I mean,
it's fun, right? But like, that you find just by what's the situation, and that's. But of course, I'm not super like there in all points, but like I'm better than I used to be, I think, in this regard. But
I think you're.
But then it's like,
Boris.
but then it's like, it's funny, right? Because then you realize you're in that situation, and now you have that freedom because of what you did back then, right? So like, so what is then the advice to the younger self? Like, so.
Well, that's an interesting one, isn't it? I love the way you said it, because you're right. That what you just said then was, the work we've done in the past.
Right.
Because if you were just starting out, I personally, I wouldn't give the advice of you spend as much time doing whatever you want. I still believe that in order to be, I would always rally to be successful, you have to go all in. Now that I know a lot of people think you can, I mean, if you can not do that, brilliant. If you can go surfing all day and spend 1 minute and be successful, brilliant. I couldn't do that. But you're right. Now, I think your hack there of trying not to stay grounded and then remind yourself that actually success is for us, and certainly for me now, is the freedom that I've built myself. Like 5 years ago, I said to myself, I don't want to be my life to be dictated by my calendar. It's not like it was ever massively full, but just the idea, which is why I've struggled even to put this in, but because I never like to know that I'm doing anything next week, tomorrow, because I don't know how I feel. So if you say, let's have a meeting in 2 months, I'm like, who the fuck knows what they're doing in 2 months? I don't know what I'm doing tomorrow. So reminding myself that actually for the last 5 years, I've actually got to where I was trying to get without knowing it. It's hard. So thanks for reminding me on that. Because that is the critical thing, isn't it? Like, crikey.
I'm glad that I got you in the calendar.
Yeah, no, that's the only thing I had in the calendar. I hardly even use it anymore. But then this was something that was interested in me. But I think it's just because I love to be spontaneous. I love, like you say, wake up. How do you feel today? You want to go surfing? Boom. Who wouldn't want to? I mean, it's powerful. It's powerful.
But then again, new stuff can happen, and it doesn't mean that you're like not productive, So I'm now curious about finding that out, like how different can it be? And I literally do, I don't know, so many things on the opposite, but at the same time, kind of, feel that there's certain things we have done in the past that allow us skill set wise also to do stuff differently.
Oh, definitely. And I would say, Boris, I mean, like you said it earlier on about, we use the word ChatGPT, but AI it's so overwhelmingly wonderful. I mean, I've actually always, although I've never
back then when we built the company,
we didn't know. So actually, I can achieve, like you said earlier, I can achieve as much more in terms of my learning. So it's almost like in half an hour in a day, I could do a day, 2 weeks worth of brain learning. And I like curiosity is my favorite thing. I think I'm happiest when I'm being curious. And I think so now I just try to put as much time into my learning with the AI as possible. All my YouTube, I love YouTube Premium. I always like to promote Premium, no adverts, so no distractions. I mean, it's the best money I've ever spent. It's the best. It really is. I can't believe anyone wouldn't do it. It's like literally a hack. So there will be a hack. Pay 20 quid a month for your premium YouTube. But it is. It's incredible, isn't it? So that is definitely a hack.
Wonder how much the share of ADHD people is among the purchasers of YouTube.
I mean, it's the best money I've ever spent, without a shadow of a doubt. Anything that just gets rid of crap out of the way. But yeah, I guess just we're like, if we were young, I'm not sure if I wanted to have known. To your point about labeling, Like I think I was very lucky that I
Not
built
knowing
us
it.
to not knowing it. I think it became harder without a doubt as it became as I got older probably. But I feel like I was able to just go with it. And I was in a situation where I had my wife and my best mate, who is the co-founder. And so without knowing it, they were supporting me when I didn't know it. So I think if I was starting out being with the label of ADHD, starting the agency, I think it would have been, I don't think it would have been as easy. So I
mean,
definitely
already
don't.
choosing to study design or to become a designer, I think that's like, at least like was my hack to to be able to do that stuff. Like I say, and then you met all these clients, like people who worked on the client side, and they were like, "Oh, this is so fun to work with you guys on this post-it walls this week. Next week we have to go back into our office and we're not gonna do this anymore." And I'm like, "What?" But
I
maybe
remember that.
the job choice becoming a designer is probably also quite telling, you know, like
Yeah, definitely. It's funny you reminded me now that, fun enough, through the building and firing the architects, you suddenly realize you have to sort of find ways to actually sort of get your ideas across. And I had invested in this business called Spline many years back. It was like it's a 3D tool, a web tool to create 3D, very simple. And I just started like a year and a half ago. I just got really into it. And I thought, I'm going to learn. I want to actually have the time to learn a program. And for me, I have to learn it through having an output. And so just doing very basic 3D, it's just been so exciting. So actually empowering myself to actually be able to do 3D to help build a house has been fascinating. I've really enjoyed it. So it's ironic that I leave ustwo after starting 20 years before being a designer, but then very quickly not, and then not doing any design for 20 years, and then starting design again as I leave. So I'm a designer again now. In fact, that's how I should have been. I don't know if I would want to actually do it for other people anymore. But oh mate, it's been
thank
I
you
sent
so
your
much.
platform to a friend of mine. Asked if I could asked the other day if I could talk to somebody who he thought had ADHD, and I actually just said, well, he wanted to build a platform. Actually, he wanted some advice. That was it. And I was like, oh god, one of those people, you know, when I say, oh, you know, they've got an idea for something and they want to pick my brains. And I was like, and actually nothing, it was not, it was, he wanted to build a community for something. And you had just emailed me. So I sent him your Neurospicy platform. And he said, oh, wow, I've been looking for something like this myself. So he signed up. So about a week ago, he signed
That's
up.
awesome.
So I'll be spreading the love of,
Yes.
You call it Neurospicy, I've just realized, yeah? Is that how you call it?
Yeah, Neurospicy Founders.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, perfect.
And hope to see you also around there. Like we meet up on a continuous basis. Maybe I can invite you spontaneously. And,
it's got to be spontaneous. Get me on the WhatsApp, and that's always easiest. And then I'll send you my number. That's the best way.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that's a hack. Though I will say one last final hack. I used to always feel a real guilt if I wasn't giving to people all the time. And I realized, I think in the last few years, that in order to give to other people, I need to be able to give to myself. I know it sounds cliche, but I will often just leave my WhatsApps unread or read quickly and then unread it again, because I'm not all, I realized that I can't, there's only so much mental capacity I have. And even just talking to like even my mum or something sometimes will just I just don't have the mental capacity. So I guess what hacked myself was letting myself understand it's okay not to be there for everybody else all the time. Like that's just not possible. So I think I used to never do that. I would always answer everyone straight away, but now I don't. But I did answer you. Oh no, it took a week, but I was only because there was lots of other, I had to get to you. So it was nothing to do with you.
I love it.
Legend,
Thank
mate.
you. This is really, really cool.
Pleasure, mate. Pleasure. Well, hopefully there's something good there. And no, thanks, mate. Boris, it's a pleasure to meet you, mate, properly. And
yes,
I'm excited. Go surfing now.
Ever make it over there, then I let you know. And
come and see the house.
To Japan. Yeah.
Come and see the house. It'll be good, mate.
Awesome.
Oh, legend.
Have a good
Cheers,
day.
Boris, mate. Pleasure, dude.
Bye.
ADHD forever. Legend.
Bye-bye.